Hi, Giuseppe.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
That's very nice. Wingfee Radio live from Antwerp. So we will continue from last session 2 weeks ago. We're very honored to have you back here in the studio. So can you explain a little bit? First, welcome, and then we just heard some music from you. So what was it? How did you make it? And where did it take place?
Great. All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me back. So this was the thing we just played was a performance that we, myself, Jorgen Simpson, a friend and a colleague of mine at the University of Limerick, and Charlie Roberts, the developer of Gibber, a visual code, performed together. Charlie had a new programming language that he wanted to display for the occasion. That took place in Barcelona last summer in occasion of the International Live Coding Conferences. That took place in Barcelona, as I said, last summer. That was part of the Algorave night. It was incredible fun. I really, literally wet my pants on how much fun I had. Now, the recording we have here is great, but the sound in the venue was 20 million times more powerful. I had so much fun. So this was a kind of... what is that? I heard one. Okay, so some sound in the background. So that started as a collaboration between me and Jorgen, where Jorgen basically has brought on stage a very sophisticated modular synth, who also was able to control to teletype. So there was also a bit of live coding involved on his part. I instead came on stage with an extremely minimal setup, which involved just a minimal Orca patch, through which I just controlled a bunch of numbers in a grid. Let's say was roughly a grid of 6 by 6. In which I was just sending, typing numbers. I used this keyboard here. I don't know if, can you see this keyboard? Can people, well, it's just a numerical keypad, through which I was controlling Orca, and Orca was sending basically voltages to an expert sleepers that Jorgen had on his modular synth. So basically, I wasn't doing any sound. The way it worked was that I was sending these voltages to Jorgen. Jorgen was taking the voltages in and start manipulating, taking these voltages to do different things, including some teletype code.
Okay.
But the sound we just heard were only and exclusively coming from Jorgen. That was I thought the combination was quite interesting because it juxtaposed the hyper complexity of a modular system, such as the one that Jorgen had, and extremely minimal setup, which instead I was controlling. The thing is that the combination of the two, because we were never sure what was happening in real time, it made the improvisation really exciting for both of us. We rehearsed a few times before the gigs. We rehearsed in the apartment in Barcelona, and sometimes we were in awe and hearing the kind of stuff that we were able to make. Like I said, wow. And of course, once we jumped on stage, it was yet another different setup. Like all the time we played, it was a different thing. But highly engaging because, we were trying to, it was like trying to pilot a jumbo jet. And you try to push button. You more or less think that you know what you're doing, but you really don't.
Oh, I hope the pilot of a jet. No,
exactly. But eventually we ought to pilot this thing, and eventually we ought to land, and somehow we did it. And that was really, really rewarding, I think.
Oh, that's really nice. And so for the listeners and the viewers, so you were saying you were controlling Orca, which is a program, and what kind of program is this, and how does this relate to let's say live coding or algorithmic composition and music making?
Yeah, Orca is a really interesting language or piece of software devised by 100 rabbits. It's really minimal in the way it's been designed. It enables you to do things a la Max MSP, if you wish, a la Pure Data, if you want, but in a kind of a way, much more constrained way. It involves a grid where you have certain operators, if and else and all that kind of stuff, by letters and numbers. You create your own grid, and then this grid is a network of things that happen in real time. The way I used Orca was, there was a patch, an underlying patch that was relatively sophisticated, but what I was displaying to the audience was just that simple grid. So it was just a portion of the Orca patch. And on that grid, I could only input numbers. Now, those numbers then, of course, initiated a chain of events that led to eventually send voltages to Jorgen and his modular synth. But the way it was presented, it was in a very kind of minimal format. And the reason for that is because, as perhaps connecting what we were saying last week, it was about trying to put the accent on the idea of musical gestures through the means of live coding. So last week we were talking about many people start live coding on stage from scratch. Sorry, not from scratch. As in the origins of the live coding movement, where people, they were more prone to jump on stage with a blank page and start building things. They didn't care if there was 10 minutes of silence before you heard the first blip. And now instead the community seems to have veered towards kind of a pre-written patches where people start changing things and perhaps adding minimal line of code. Mostly it's changing the existing line of
parameters
code.
And
parameters within the existing live. But instead I wanted to use Orca in such a way that it was becoming almost a programming language on its own by simply manipulating numbers. And only a few numbers, because I could have manipulated way more than that. But just I wanted to see how much could I do with only just a bunch of numbers. And that's because I want to connect to this idea that musical gestures through digital devices are nothing else than numbers.
Yeah. So for the listeners who don't see us now on the live stream, Giuseppe has just like a very nice looking tactile keyboard, and it's just basically a number pad with some cursor keys. So there's numbers. You have backspace, and it's just like.
And the numbers from 0 to 9.
Yeah. So and it looks amazing. Yeah. So, but the thing is that so were you also like bridging the gap because you had like a sound maker with you, like somebody with a modular synth, and he was patching from scratch, or did he? Because you were saying like the sounds were always different, and the.
Yeah, no. So Jorgen had a kind of pre-made patches, cables going from A to B in his modular synth, but still that wasn't enough, let's say.
Okay.
And so he was actively acting on the modular synth. So he had an underlying bass
Yes.
on which
Okay.
start improvising, but he had a great degree of freedom within that minimal initial setup. Starting patching live.
Patching from scratch.
He was every now and then I saw him moving cables from A to B, but the modular patch was extremely complex, so not every cable was removed and patched somewhere
I
else.
can imagine. Yeah, but you don't have, let's say, presets like on a digital synth or a VST where you're just
no.
So
no, there were. I would say Jorgen is not here, but I would say it was 10% of a preset.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you had within the rest, it was really highly improvised. So much that every time we rehearse, we may have sounds that sounded a bit similar, but the sonicscape that were coming out of it, they were all every time was something completely different.
And also, I can imagine that if you're rehearsing in a room, or then you're going to a venue with a super high-end sound system, that the way the music comes into play is completely different.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. Well, Jorgen was really organized. He traveled with a small pair of Genelecs. It was just one Genelec, and so our rehearsals at the apartment were great.
With a mono speaker.
With a mono speaker, it was great. Like it still sounded great, but of course the speakers at the venue were mind blowing. Like the setup was incredible. But the interesting thing, I think there is another thing that I thought it was really interesting in that performance, and was the fact that I wasn't responsible for sound.
Yeah.
I was, because of course I was sending these voltages to Jorgen, and Jorgen was controlling it. But the sound module was just one person, was coming out of his device. My computer wasn't doing any sounds. So I thought that was interesting because first of all, it freed me from trying to dovetail my sound into his sounds. And also, although the audience, of course, didn't perhaps appreciate that because they probably imagined that some of the sounds were coming from me, but I think overall the performance, the sonic world in the performance resulted in something way more coherent, just because the complexity afforded by the modular instrument gave enough depth to the sonic world that we were creating. So it was just a matter of molding it putting into shape as we were playing. And I thought that was a very coherent thing.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting because you don't see that often. That's kind of new that you actually take apart the compositional, or if you're doing an improvisation, it's not like somebody thinks about the notes and then the saxophone player is blowing the thing or something. You really can take these things apart, which is quite novel also, because normally you would say, okay, a composer composes something and he knows more or less how it's going to sound according to the instrument he's writing for, but in this way it's all real time.
Yeah,
in a way
it is real time. And also it is real time. And when we watch live performances like a duo, trio, or whatever, the question is always at the back of our mind: who's doing what?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
because
especially with electronic music.
Especially electronic music. I mean, if there is a computer and a saxophone, you have no doubts. That sound comes from there. And then if it's a simple saxophone or is not connected to the computer, you may have an understanding who's doing what. But when you have 3 people on stage, 2 people on stage, or 20 million people on stage in front of a laptop, you don't really know who's doing what. In that case,
and do you like that, or do you want to address that people know more, or is it more like the mystique, or you don't care, or?
I don't particularly care as a performer. I might care a bit more about if I was in the audience, perhaps. No, I'd like to know who's doing what here. Perhaps it's not even important that. But definitely, I felt way, way freer knowing that the sounds were coming just from the modular synth, and I was just adding. No, it would have been like it is as almost like now there were 4 pair of hands touching that thing. you know,
Yeah.
and doing things with it. So I thought that was the key part.
Yeah.
And also it latches on to the thing we were talking about last week, the musical gestures and the kind of interest I have in the kind of more philosophical space. This idea as digital artists about the connection between us and the numbers. Because the digital world is just a bunch of numbers. Yes, it could be zeros and ones, but it could be also 0, 1, and 2. There are ternary computers out there. But I believe that at the bottom layer, our way of engaging with the materiality of the digital, if such a materiality exists, is not the push of buttons or writing code, but is effectively those zeros and ones, those numbers. And so I admit that it sounds very strange to talk about the materiality of the digital in terms of numbers. Numbers, it's an abstract concept, right? But yes, that's what our materiality is. People working with computers ought to deal with. That's the kind of take I have on my own practice, and therefore the reason why I use this kind of minimal setup is precisely to bring to the fore this connection between me and the numbers. That's why I use the numerical key. I try to avoid coding in languages where I had to type letters. Those are conventions, but the bottom layer is numbers. Now, even when I press the number 8, it will be translated in binary code, in this case, in any computer, but still is a number. So I try to just stress that point and try to bring to the fore that connection and see if I can feel something in just this direct manipulation of numbers. I don't know. Perhaps, go ahead.
So also we were speaking 2 weeks ago, how important is it then that, because the modular system, I can imagine is for most part like an analog system. I can imagine it's also a little bit mixed, but the core idea of a modular system is that there's a lot of analog devices in there. Yeah. So how important is that then for you? So you are like going into these numbers and trying this very minimal thing with the numbers, and how important is it to you that then the CV is going to an analog source?
Yeah, very important. I think to reconnect to the analog domain prior to connecting with sound, coming out of the speakers, which of course is analog again, but using this combination at least of digital, exclusively digital, as it was my setup, connecting to something that it is analog, except for little bits of it, I think is very important. I don't know, it feels more deeply rooted in the experience of reality without any extra layer of mediation, such as the one that affords numbers. And numbers is some way of mediating is placed in the middle between me and the sound that comes out. That kind of mediation, if you want a comparison, does not exist when I play a traditional instrument, a guitar or a trumpet. I'm one and all with the instrument. The instrument responds. That's the kind of materiality I'm talking about, not in the experience. And so in that sense, reality is analog. Now, I know here many discussion people say, but you cannot say that. There are people saying that reality is digital. Well, theories, okay? Until we experience reality.
Who says that reality is digital?
Well, there are people. Yeah.
Maybe in simulation.
In a simulation theory, maybe.
Yeah, there are. But the way we engage with the materiality of things, whether it's a glass of beer or a musical instrument, is that we touch, we use our hands, and the material responds with us prior to any extrinsic use of that thing. Instead, in the digital world, there is this number that is placed between us, our gestures, typing or whatever you want to do, and the sound that comes out of the speakers. That's mediated by an extra layer, which is abstract.
An abstract,
if you wish. Yeah.
An abstract and also a finite layer.
Yeah. And so, in relation to things like perhaps, if we have time, I wanted to show you this thing. So, another project where, for example, this is made with Orca as well. And so, again, here, what I'm trying to do is, it's on the screen, this one. Yeah. And what I'm trying to do here, for people that are not seeing this, it's again an Orca patch, yeah? But it's extremely minimal. I'm going to play it in a second. It's extremely minimal. And again, that was the idea of just how much can I connect and do with numbers. Let me first stop this thing. And here.
Thank you, Giuseppe. That looks great for people who can log in on the YouTube channel. It's just like I was saying, it's this grid, something between for people who are coming from a tracker background. It looks a little bit like that in combination with the old Minesweeper game or something. It's very neat. And then you explain me that it's actually, once you know it a little bit, it's actually quite readable, right? If you're
it is, yeah. Especially this patch. I mean, it's extremely simple. While he was playing, I was explaining it to you, like in few words. It didn't take long. But again, here the idea is how could I restrict myself with. How much can I restrict myself, and how do those severe restrictions, how much can I get out to make it musically interesting? So in this case, I have basically 3 different modules, a small module, all sending MIDI notes to the same instrument in Surge XT. Surge XT is a synthesizer.
Yes, very good.
Very good one. So this is just
freeware, open source.
Open source, of course.
In VCV, yes. And also the guy is very active on the bespoke forum. Also, it's great.
Oh, yeah. It's a beautiful synth as well. You can use it as a plugin, or you can use it as standalone. It works with Carla.
It's MPE enabled.
Everything. It's great. So in this case, it's just one sound, which these 3 modules sends MIDI notes at different times. So because the sound has a delay effect in it, like you hear these overlapping things, and so that's the way I used it. I just said, okay, I have one sound, I have just 3 modules that sends the different MIDI notes on the same instrument at different times, and see how much I can merge them together to form a chord, or to stretch them out in a form of different musical patterns, and so on and so forth. This is track number 2 in an album that was released last year on a label, on Stochastic Resonance label. Is a label of guys in Rome who has a roster of wonderful artists. If you go on Bandcamp and you just check Stochastic Resonance, you'll see an ocean of artists, wonderful artists that they have in their own roster of. It's great, actually. So I was pleased to release with them this short album, and it's just a very short EP made of 3 short compositions, as the one we just listened to. The caveat with this kind of project, though, is that once you purchase the EP with Stochastic Resonance, they also send you a code to download the entire operating system with all my patches, all the stuff like so.
Oh, great!
If you work on Windows, Linux, or Mac, you can just download this image of my operating system, run it in a virtual desktop or whatever software you want, and you will have the patch. So you can then play with the patch and do the music you want, or if you want, you can go on Vimeo and look at the video as the one we just saw here, and try to emulate exactly what I was doing, and it should work out of the bag. Just as simple as that. But yeah, no, that's. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting also from, let's say, if you're coming from a classical background, like I saw there, like a Euclidean rhythm, 3/9. It's like to write a rhythm like that down, it's in a linear fashion, it's quite complex to read, actually.
Yeah.
But then if you see it, it's just like, oh, it's 3/9 or 4/7 or whatever. It's just like this very neat 3. You had 3 characters. I saw like 3, and then E or U or something, and then 9.
Exactly.
That's from a how do you call it, like a schriftuur in Flemish, like or in Dutch, like notation-wise, it's absolutely mind-blowing, because it has a rhythmic complexity, but it's actually 3 or 4 lines of code.
And in this case, out of the 3 rhythmic modules, only one was in a Euclidean meter, let's say. The other two were traditional notation, 4/6, 3/4, 4/4, and so on. And in this case, it's the combination of the two. You have, in this case, you have all, the mesh of two notation patterns overlapping.
But I can imagine if you just like change the 9 to a 7 or an 11 or something, it becomes super complex rhythmically.
Yeah, and rich. Yeah. I mean, it's used a lot. Okay, Euclidean rhythms have become really popular. Some people are already fed up with them. I'm not yet.
Well, fed up with them. I think there is like this list from, I think I got it from a Tidal Cycles forum, where they have like analyzed some traditional rhythms in Euclideans, and you really have like these African rhythms and Latin American rhythms, and I think it's quite amazing. So I wouldn't say I will be fed up with it because.
Well, I think the power also lies in the combination. You can random switch between, if you have like a Euclidean simple 3/8, but then you can randomize 3 and 5/8. And then you get something. I think it's also almost unexhaustible, the combinations that you can make. Yeah. And it always sounds really musical. So I can understand that you're fed up with it.
Yeah, I'm not. No, I was saying
I said people. No, you people. Some people are maybe then, because it's not new anymore. Yeah. But some of these things are thousands of years old, these combinations. So we know from tradition that it works. But then if you start combining them, then you start making new stuff out of tradition. Yeah. And I think that's something that you can keep exploring.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe they should try.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so you were saying that if you buy the record at Stochastic Resonance, the Bandcamp, so they can render your EP for themselves, or they can also then change the sound, I guess. Or
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So you get to download the image of the operating system, and according to whatever operating system you have. So there is the Windows image, the Mac and Linux. I use Linux, but I spent the time to try to create these images also for other operating systems. And they send you also the instructions on how to do that. Now you have to be a bit confident in installing a virtual desktop, or
so you have to be a nerd.
a bit. But once this kind of stuff is mostly just click and double click.
Yes. Okay.
Sometimes though, this kind of stuff are kind of daunting if you've never done it before, or if you're a geek and you don't want to use if you're a geek, actually you can do it in 2 seconds. It's just a command line. And it starts. Suddenly you see my desktop into your desktop, and it works straight away. There are instructions. You can have fun with that. Yeah.
So really nice. And so what we saw now is like it's a how do we say that, like a deterministic piece. So with Euclidean rhythms, it will actually be the same. Mm-hmm. Do you also have pieces that are using like things like probabilities? So if you would recreate your desktop on your computer, that you actually hear the EP, but there's also some different things, or is the concept like it should be exactly the same?
I don't mind. So people can do whatever they want with that. They are offered the opportunity to play the same sound, the same patches that I've played here. Mm-hmm. But they can do whatever they want. Even myself, now when I play this kind of stuff live, it's always different.
It's always different, of course.
So now I have some pieces which I know where I'm heading to, and I have, let's say, postmarks. Like, and say, I have to hit this point at this moment, and blah, blah, blah. But then people can just work with themselves. Not only that, if they want, they can just start creating new Orca patches, use different sounds from Surge XT. They can start using the system. It's a full operational desktop, so they can do whatever they want.
That's very interesting, and it's also like refreshing, or that's something new, I guess, like coming from the 90s IDM scene, where everything was really closed, and it's like it's like the mystique. I'm not gonna say how I did it. It's very much a mystery and a secret.
Yeah.
That we're now heading to this, the whole community is being very open, and everything is open source, and say like, oh, you want to see how I did it? Here, take an image of my desktop. I mean, that's taking it to the extreme.
That's as far as I can go. After that, I can simply ship you my computer. And I mean, if you want to pay me, I'm fine with that. I can buy a new one. That's okay.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Yeah.
At a certain moment, this is all, of course, the ethos of the live coding scene. Not only, of course, but you saw this in the live coding scene, that they're sharing the code. That's the thing. You go to a performance. If you watch carefully, you can reproduce it. Everything that's possible. Especially now, because I don't know what this ORCAD thing is doing, but if you know tidal cycles in Sonic Pi, then in the most cases you can follow it, because the most used environments are those.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
There was a certain moment also, maybe to have some revenue, some sold USB discs, USB slots, USB dongles. Yeah, you know, this memory on a USB stick. Yes. And then the code was on there as well, so you can share your code by sending USB.
Absolutely, yeah.
But now you can, of course, just download it as well.
Yeah.
But instead of selling a CD, they sell you a USB stick. Yeah, they're selling you code, actually.
Yeah, and that was actually the original idea I had with the AP, with stochastic resonance, was, maybe I can just do a USB. And then eventually, this is technical reason, and perhaps it's just my incompetency, but I found that giving somebody else a USB stick makes the entire process more complicated, because sometimes when I create an image, a bootable USB stick, sometimes it doesn't work because the computer, now Mac, doesn't want you to run any other operating system. Windows now has a safety BIOS, I can't remember what it's called, and you have to be able to deactivate the safety, whatever it's called.
A lot of problems with this as well.
So I said, let's just go for virtual desktal, a virtualization of the desktop is just perhaps the simplest thing. And so
the VirtualBox.
VirtualBox, exactly. So there are VirtualBox, and there are many others you can use.
Yes, and then you don't have these problems anymore.
And that was probably the best, because even when you create the images for these kind of virtual desktop virtualization, there are command lines that you can say, do these for Windows, for the Windows version, for the Mac, for the Linux, and so it boots and it's fine.
Yes,
and also people are not scared, because if I give them like a USB stick and they don't know about
infect your computer or something.
What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna lose my data. I don't want to be.
Which is true.
Exactly. Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a lot of trust. People don't know me. I might just inject viruses. Use my stuff. I'll destroy you. No competition.
That's a new way for spies. Send the music in code, and they're not suspicious of you infecting their computers. Well, we have some. I think some 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Is there something else that you want to show? The life of the patch? Yeah.
The patch, the thing. So going back to the idea of
I'll show your screen.
Do. Going back to the idea of. Going back to the idea of this relationship between me and numbers. Here I have created. Do you have? Okay, yeah. There. So people. Okay, I have to explain it for people on the radio, though. If you are on YouTube, you are seeing what I'm seeing. So, which is my desktop at the moment. What I have here is just. It's just a little program written in Python with just one number. And so this is how extreme we could go minimally, not to see what things what kind of stuff these things can do. What I can do on this screen is just, I have a cell, right? Center stage, and I can just input with my numeric key numbers from 0 to 9. And so this is the kind of stuff I could do.
Wow, that was amazing. So
you.
for the people who couldn't see it, Giuseppe was actually just entering numbers, and then if I saw it right, when you entered 0, the music stopped, and then you gave some other numbers, and then things were shifting, and we heard what we heard. So.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's precisely what I was doing. I was just inputting into this cell numbers between 0 and 9. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 at different times. Now, the sonic complexity that it was derived by this simple sets of gestures, me typing on a numeric keyboard, was hidden underneath in the sound engine, which was cardinal, was a cardinal patch, which is extremely sophisticated. It's a patch actually that I did not create. It's a patch created by Luke Blake. Everybody can download the patch. It's on patch storage. You'll find it there. I just made little tweaks so that this patch can now receive those numbers.
Okay.
And what I was controlling that patch was simply the tempo. That patch from Luke Blake is just a self-generative synthesizer. And with just those numbers, I was controlling the speed. So I was just basically increasing and decreasing the speed a lot. So I was going from 0.09 or 0.9 to 900. So you could hear, and so this is just to why I've done this, but for multiple reasons. One is that there is this distance between what we show, what the computers show. No matter even if you do code, yes, you are not fully transparent.
No, it's also so mysterious. Actually, sometimes
it's mysterious as well. And so, here is also another level of mysteriosity that you can add to your live coding.
Well, you could say that. It's a blinking dot.
Yeah, it's a blinking dot that is telling me the time. Oh yeah, because I could change the blinking dot that in the interface is because when I press the numbers are quantized a la Ableton. So even if I press number 5, it actually doesn't trigger the 5 until the next tick.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
And so that means I can decrease and increase the tempo, the resolution of my gesture, which is also another idea there that I want to stress. I mean, our gestures are not only mediated by numbers, but also by the resolution at which those numbers are crunched. And so that makes an extra layer of complexity in the interaction. And then also the idea that this patch also can work with any patch. I mean, I used Luke Blake, one of his IDM synthesizers that is on patch storage. He has at least other 5s, and I could do the same thing with all the kind of stuff and see the thing. Now, in my philosophical writings, I'm very critic of this notion of gesture, digital gestures. I think it distance our technology, digital technology, to a certain extent, distance ourselves from our own self to a certain extent. But I think eventually I'm trying to find a path to resolve this philosophical impasse through the idea that here, anyway, I could have fun. I could see agency even in doing this kind of numbers. And yes, well, if I press 1, the result in this case would be the same as you do it, or anybody else will do it. But the way I create this moment of silence, this moment of speed and things like this, that also makes a kind of a performance. So it's how we use those numbers that perhaps can point to a renewed sense of self in our interaction to the digital. But these are discussions that that I'm still
very interesting. I think if I can add up a little bit, like what I'm thinking is also like this. If you go to the basis of oscillation, it's actually a feedback loop. So, and the thing is, for me, is like on a if you're working digitally or analog, but now you're working on a purely with numbers in a quantized manner. I think there's still a feedback going on. Maybe the sound is digital, but you are analog, and the digital sound is fed back to your analog system, your body, and this creates this feedback loop. And for me, that's where life starts.
Yeah.
Okay. We can keep this discussion alive online, but thank you for listening. This is the end of the broadcast here locally on Radio Centraal, 106.7 FM. Bedankt voor het luisteren. En ik hoop dat jullie binnen 2 weken terug bij ons zijn voor wat meer live coding en et cetera. Bedankt voor het luisteren.
En dank u, Giuseppe, uiteraard.
Thanks to you.